So first, we're going to kick off everything by doing a moment of silence. Right after, we're going to pause for some reflection. Then right after that, we're just going to get into looking at some of the ways that this day is remembered at Ground Zero and go into a segment called Did You Know? Because there's a survivor tree at Ground Zero and we'd love to share some thoughts on that. Right after, we would like to do our Unity Through Service portion, and that's our movement challenge. So when you were invited to our event today, we did mention that you'd be challenged through movement. And so we're going to go right into that. We're going to first do a community warm-up session, and then we're going to do our challenge, our 2000 Steps Together challenge, and give you that charge. And actually, this is a great point to mention that in order for you to participate in that challenge, we need for you to pick a group of sorts to be a part of. And so we have 4 groups for you to choose from. We have our jumping jack group, we have our squats, we have our calf raises, and we have our knee to elbow raises. I'll repeat those again, and they're also in the chat if you need to see them. At this point, we'd like for you to go ahead and sort of name yourself. So whichever one of those activities stands out most to you, go ahead and name yourself. So you can add that in your name right on your Zoom screen, or you can even just like hyphenate your actual name and just put the activity next to it so we can still know your name plus your activity. So once again, in order to participate in our movement portion, we just need to know which group or which activity you're most drawn to, because that's going to be a part of what we're going to do later. So that's the jumping jacks, the squats, the calf raises, or the knee to elbow raises. Go ahead and name yourselves, and I'll give you just a few seconds for that. If you're all done, you can even give me thumbs up. Thank you. I see some people have already named themselves. If you can, if not, no worries. We'll add you to a group. Hope that's okay if we just pop you into any group. And so we'll do that a little bit later. And so after we're all done with the movement challenge portion, we're just going to close out with some thoughts. No worries if you need to skip the movement challenge. We'll explain when we're in the rooms, but it's really just a time for us to come together in a small community. And so while we do hope that everyone will get involved and participate as much as possible, you won't be held to that. We'll explain more later, but definitely if you can be a part of it, but if not, we completely understand. And so at this time, if you're all done naming yourselves, we're going to just move right into our first portion. Okay, so welcome once again. And around the country, people pause to remember those who lost their lives on September 11, 2001. And this pause was filled yesterday, and even as we continue today with more services, it was filled with many sentiments that brought back memories of sadness and grief. For some, it gave a sense of hope, and for others, it was a time to reflect on where we've been, how far we've come as a nation. But one common goal to this pause was a chance to fulfill our vow, as I mentioned before, to never forget as a nation. And so at this time, let's take a 2-minute moment of silence to reflect and to give our vow to never forget. and time. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking some time to reflect. Now, over the years, many things have come out of our remembrance of 9/11. We've learned so much about the different persons who lost their lives through whether we watch it on television or we participate in person at Ground Zero. We've even seen different ways in which the day impacted our own lives. And so at this time, we just like to take a moment to reflect on some of those instances in which this day did touch our lives. And so we just wanted to bring up the two thought questions. How did 9/11 impact your life and even your community? And in what ways has 9/11 shaped your view? Or in what ways has the impact of 9/11 shaped your view of what happened that day? Again, we have another whiteboard format, but if you prefer to unmute, you can do that or add something in the chat. To add your thoughts here, it's the same as before. We ask that you go to view options at the top of your screen. And within the options, you should see annotate, and you can go ahead and just add your thoughts here. And Kim, would you mind going ahead and reading for me? Anything that might be shared?
Yep, can do.
And so while we wait for the thoughts to be added, it's just so moving each year to take time and even hear the names as they're read. I remember just sitting yesterday and thinking, wow, so many lives forever changed, not just for the families, but just across the country. Those who might have witnessed it, forever stamped in your mind what that was like to see so many people in distress. And so, yeah, our lives are forever changed. And we give thanks even for all that happened after, you know, the war to protect our freedoms, all the troops that are deployed. We can never even say thank you enough to those who continue to serve even now, just to make sure that our freedoms are forever in place. And so for that, we say thank you. Any thoughts to share, Kim?
It looks like we have one. It says, I was in middle school and it was a strange experience to have an understanding what was going on, but also not. As I moved through life, I don't remember life pre 9/11. The steel that the towers were constructed from were made in the town where this person lives. When the tower came down, there was a sense of grief and guilt felt by so many.
Oh, wow.
I was very young at the time, but my brother was in New York City. In the chat, I was a baby when 9/11 happened. Everything I know about that tragic day was through the accounts of my families and teachers. At the time, I was 1 year old, but my mother reminds me of the day and my family and I went through.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Yeah, and keeping the memory alive by never forgetting and sharing it with the next generation each time, for sure. Thank you so much. And so, oh, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, I think I will just go ahead and speak and share my reflection very quickly. I too was in middle school, just about to get into high school. The school that I was in, I was in the fourth or fifth floor, and we had pretty perfect. It was, as we know, it was a clear day, 2001, and so we had a clear view of the New York City skyline from the Bronx, where I was born and raised. So we collectively watched the towers fall. We saw the second plane hit, And it was, for me, it was I think a moment of strange awareness. Still being so young, we often are just kind of like reading history, and that made me understand that we are history, that we are part of the
Mhm.
dialogue of everything that is happening around us.
So
Um,
true.
I also had a lot of different things that didn't know that I had to be grateful for.
Mhm.
Again, as a small child, you're a little bit of a brat, and I certainly was. And so I thought that my mom just, despised me, just wanted me to be at school the whole time. And so we were sent to the gymnasium, and child after child was picked up by the parents. Obviously, school was let out early, and I was certain that my mother would not pick me up because I know that she's a hard worker and she's going to be at work, and there was no time for me. And I was one of the first children to get picked up,
Wow.
and that was one of those moments where I think my connection with my mom really grew. My brother was working in Manhattan at the time, and he was in a building where the second plane actually flew right over him.
Mhm.
So again, me being a bit of a brat, I always wanted to fight my brother, but all I wanted that day was for him to come back home, and he couldn't
Yes.
because the trains were all everything was shut down. So luckily, the building he was working at, he was able to stay there with good people. Um, and lastly, New York has its intense history, and growing up in the South Bronx, it could be jarring. It was jarring. It was a difficult place. But that day, I really saw the collective come together. Um, everyone was lighting candles and putting it on their windowsills, and it was just a strange sort of peacefulness come to New Yorkers. um, and that is just one thing that I'll never forget about my city, that when the time of need comes, we do come together.
Thank you so much, Raymond. And you're absolutely right. I heard words like jarring, growing up quickly. Those are the images that came out of this, and seeing your own family in a new light for sure. And then the whole town, the whole community, you're right, that unity, that uniting, that coming together. We definitely got all of those lessons very quickly through that day for sure. And thank you so much once again for sharing. And thanks to everyone who did share. I'd like to close out our reflections right now with just a thought about how inspiring the tributes have been over the years. And I'm especially moved, and I'm always amazed by the wealth of information that comes out of the 9/11 Memorial Site at Ground Zero. Whether I'm browsing virtually, um, thank you so much, Raymond, for sharing. Whether I'm browsing virtually or in person, there's always this chance to learn something new. And so this year, as I was browsing and as I was gathering my thoughts, one thing really stood out. And for me, it was the survivor tree. So did you know that there was a survivor tree at Ground Zero? Well, much like the Up2Us Sports mission, and our goal mostly is to foster strength, resilience, and even that legacy of strength in our youth and the youth that we serve. There's a tree at Ground Zero that stands for all those things. It stands for strength, resilience, and here is its story. In October of 2001, while they were doing all the cleanup after the fateful day, a severely damaged tree was discovered at Ground Zero. With snap roots and burnt out branches, broken branches, the tree was removed from the rubble, and it was placed in the care of the New York City Department Parks and Recreation. After its recovery and its rehabilitation, the tree was moved back to the memorial site in 2010. So now with smooth limbs and a new extended sort of stumps, there created this visible demarcation of what happened in the tree's past as well as now it's present. And so today the tree stands as a living reminder of everything I've said before and everything you've all touched on in your recollection. And it stands for strength, survival, rebirth, resilience. And so that tree is called a calorie pear tree, and it became known as the survivor tree. And it endured the attacks of the attacks at the World Trade Center. And so at this time, I'd like to give you a chance again to unmute if you'd like and to share any thoughts of inspiration regarding this tree. And then I'll just go on with the program that's sprouted since. Anyone wants to add a thought to it? Anything in the chat? I'm so sorry, Kim, I'm not able to see.
No, but I do think it's really crazy that the tree was able to survive under rubble, under fire, under all of that, and still be able to grow again or produce, you know, seeds or whatever that looks like. So it's pretty inspiring that out of mass destruction and sadness, and there can be renewal or, you know, rebirth.
Thank you. Yes, and definitely. And so after it was re-erected at Ground Zero, the tree's influence didn't stop there. Much like, again, our mission to build community and strengthen our community, a seedling program came from the initial replanting. And so back in 2013, Alberto, did you have a thought? I'm so sorry. Kim, would you like to read that for me?
Yeah, so in college, when Alberto was worked with the Santa Fe Memorial Foundation first semester, they were a recipient of a seedling from the survivor.
Oh, awesome. And so that ties in even that the fact that a community came out of this movement regarding the tree. And so in 2013, when the program started, you're right, Alberto, different communities began receiving seedlings from this tree. And so Far Rockaway was one of the first ones. And Far Rockaway was actually really battered and torn by Superstorm Sandy. And so one of the seedlings was donated there. Then in Prescott, Arizona, 19 firefighters, they were members of the Granite Mountain Hotshots. They actually perished in June of 2013. And so that area, just to recognize their work and to show appreciation for all their sacrifice and their family sacrifice, a seedling was actually donated to Prescott, Arizona. And then because of the bombings that occurred surrounding the Boston Marathon, a seedling was even donated to the area in 2013. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. A seedling, although many of the areas that do receive the seedling, it's not so much of a good thing. You know, they've endured some kind of tragedy. It's still so much coming out of it though, so much positive, because a community is uniting to say you can survive and you can make it through this tragedy. And so in 2015 in Newtown, Connecticut, they also received a tree due to the shootings that occurred at the school in Newtown. And just recently in 2020, when we started seeing the effects of COVID, seedlings were scattered throughout the 5 boroughs of New York City, just to thank the healthcare workers, everyone who united and came together in an effort to strengthen our community once more. And so it lives on, this tree, admiring its legacy, stemming from one tree. I just wanted to highlight so much is coming out of something new each time out of Ground Zero. And so even though, again, we lost so much, we can still be united and bonded together in more growth stemming from all of that. And so now that we've looked at an activity at Ground Zero, I just wanted us to quickly shift gears now into our own remembering. And so from 9/11, lots of key figures have come out of it. Again, figures of tragedy. For instance, we lost 340 343 fallen firefighters. We lost 44 people in Flight 93. We lost 64 people in Flight 77, and 125 military personnel and civilians perished at the Pentagon. But we can still, while remembering them, do something meaningful. And here's our challenge. We're going to go ahead now and enter our breakout rooms. Each room represents an activity. And in the beginning, you named yourself, either jumping jacks or squats or calf raises or knee to elbow raises. We're going to take some time to warm up as a community for our fitness challenge. And we're going to break out into the rooms and remember a specific number or a specific figure from 9/11. And so Danielle, if you will, can you get us off into our rooms to go ahead and warm up as a community for our challenge? So we'll see you shortly. Go ahead and join your rooms, everyone.
Welcome back, everyone.
Calves are burning now.
Thank you.
Ooh,
And I
my
kept saying 44, but I meant 64. Anyone who is in our calf raisers group. Does anyone want to unmute and share for a second? What was it like in your room?
well, the squat room, my legs are on fire. We did them.
We didn't get to all the 125 knee to elbow raises, but I'm going to finish them after this.
Me too, Chloe.
There's
Me
quite
too.
enough time.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Stephanie.
so
We'll do them
much.
together.
Yes, some figures are so much larger than others, but we thank you for taking the time to remember the significance behind the number. Anyone else?
We got, I think, about 200 of the way. I did 110, and then my members contributed towards the goal.
Very cool. Thanks, Max. And you can definitely continue even after we're done. So we're winding down a bit now, and we're just going to jump on to one final figure. Yet another key figure came out of everything, and that was the number 110. And 110 marks the floors of the first tower. And so our final challenge, we just did our warm up as a community, but now we'd like for you in your own communities to unite in service and to continue to remember even after we're done on this call. So your Unity Through Service movement challenge is to take this figure with you, 110. 110 floors is approximately 2,000 steps, and that's about a mile. And so today we're challenging you to go out into your communities and remember 9/11 by doing a mile. Let's do a mile for all those we lost, to remember them and to recommit to our vow to never forget. So go ahead and get a friend, unite together. Remember, that's the key part. Unite together by getting a friend or a family member. Encourage members of your organizations maybe to join in. You can even invite members of your community to try. And we encourage you while you're doing your challenge as a community to take pictures, record videos, and we want to share. We want to share and get the word out and to continue the memory of our meeting today. And so you're invited to post on your own social media platforms, and you can tag us when you do that. We are at Up2Us VISTA when you do post. If you'd like, you can also send your content to your program leader. So you can send information to Danielle, Chloe, or Max, and they can do the posting for you. So we can go ahead and post that on our social media platforms. Because again, we don't want our challenge to end here. We don't want our remembering to just end here. And so maybe today or throughout the course of the next week, we'll give you until maybe September 16th to go ahead and challenge your community. And remember, again, the key is uniting. So you have to do it in a group. That's the challenge. And you're uniting through service and doing this movement channel. So go ahead and give us your mile, and we're looking forward to your content. And so again, in the beginning, you shared with us some really cool ways in the past that you've served on 9/11. And we thank you so much for taking the time to serve with us today. You could have done it anywhere, but you chose Up2Us, and we thank you for that. And at this time, we just like to have any closing questions or closing thoughts, and to bid you to go and do your challenge and let us know how it goes. Feel free to unmute or add your info to the chat if you have a question or a comment.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Remember, we're committed to serving, we're committed to uniting as a group, as a community, and we're committing to never forgetting. Let's always remember 9/11. Thanks, everyone.